All right, so I did my unit assessment evaluation on the greenhouse unit. I'll tell you a little bit about that unit. I'll tell you about the additional assessment I came up with, sort of my reasoning behind it, the rubric that I created, and my opportunity for feedback. All right, so I used the greenhouse from the Enger teams. It was for grades 4 through 6, and it really relies heavily on using the engineering design process. I chose this one. I used to teach 4th grade science, so I just thought that that was a curriculum or standards that I would be a little bit more familiar with. And then I really liked that it was based out of Minnesota, which is where I live. So, in the greenhouse unit, they use the engineering design process. They use a 6-step process, which is similar to some of the ones that we have used in this class, and one that I was very familiar with when I taught 4th grade science. So, define the problem, learn about the problem, plan a solution, try a solution, test a solution, decide whether the solution is good enough, and then that communication and teamwork, which sort of ties it all together. The unit was really based on a real world problem of growing produce in Minnesota due to the changing seasons. So, a challenge to do in the winter due to our cold temperatures. So I like that it really gave students a reason for this engineering design project. A very well-rounded STEM unit. Really, the engineering design process that tied through the whole unit, but then it tied in science with students needing to understand plant parts and needs of plants, and then optimal habitat for living, and then a lot of mathematics. So they do some data collection throughout. They had to do some surface area, some cost analysis, some line graphs. So it really did a great job of incorporating all of those parts of STEM. Here's a layout of the 8 lessons that are used throughout that unit. I believe each lesson had a different time frame, some longer than others, but the entire lesson lasted about 12 weeks, or the entire unit lasted about 12 weeks. I felt like in the unit as it was designed, they did a really great job already of assessment. They did a pre and post assessment at the beginning and the end. There was some assessment at the end of lesson 4 and again at the end of lesson 6. And then students kept a science notebook where they reflected on their learning throughout. So I feel like assessment was really already present here, which is great for the unit, but offered me some additional challenges as trying to create a additional assessment. So, oops, I went the wrong way. I decided to come up with my additional assessment sort of after that unit was done, thinking about how students could extend their learning using the engineering design process to solve another real world problem. So this was sort of the reflection that they would have done, again, reflecting on sort of those steps of the engineering design process, now sort of pushing them to do another real world problem. And I really liked using that real world problem because I think it gives students motivation for learning and helps them see how they can really make a difference in the world. So I created another real world problem that sort of mimicked the one that they just created with the growing season for produce in Minnesota weather, and asked students really to explain how they would use the engineering design process. So I think with the time constraints, students wouldn't have the time to walk through another 12-week engineering design process. So this is more sort of theoretical. Can they explain how to do it? So I give them this real world problem. They need to design and build a model rainwater collection and distribution system that is cost effective, efficient, and environmentally friendly. So using the engineering design process, but also likely using some of those math skills and some of the knowledge that they learned about plants. For each step, they would sort of explain how they would solve that problem. And that's really what I built into the rubric, is that they can clearly explain how they would. On my rubric, I specifically left a spot for feedback. In week 4, a lot of our reading really focused on the importance of that feedback. And what really stood out to me was how when students see a number grade, it sort of has a negative effect. But when they have just the feedback, they're more likely to expand on their learning. So I still have sort of the 3-2-1, but I would hope that students would take more from the feedback given from their responses. The project-based learning, I think, is really already built into the greenhouse unit. So I think that this is more about constructing that new knowledge, using the engineering design process in a new way. All right, and that's it.